Hello, everybody. Welcome as we join you live from Dallas, Texas. Again, from my home office. We're live on all of our platforms for NVTV. That's YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. We've got a very interesting show coming at all of you for today. When is the CDL League coming back? Why haven't we heard any announcements yet? And what is going on with the online league? We're talking all things Dashy. Is he officially off of the starting lineup for the Los Angeles OpTic? We're definitely covering that, as well as a few of your questions that you asked us on Twitter. All that and more ahead on Off the Break. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Off the Break, presented by Jack the Box. I'm Lando Sanders. Sadly, we are not in the beautiful Frontier Communications studio, but like I said, my home office will have to do for now. It's just the way that it is at the moment. But hey, at least we're able to provide some sort of normalcy for those at home. Like I said, it isn't the same, but you know, it is what it is. Miss the fact that we aren't in the Frontier Communications studio. But I want to give a very, very special thank you to the folks that are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Massive thank you to everybody who obviously is watching this live, but to also all the folks that could be watching this later down the line. If you haven't done so already, make sure to check out Off the Break on all podcast platforms in case you happen to miss an episode. Let's go and jump right in. So the question that everybody is asking, at least as of right now, including myself, pretty much the main questions that everybody has on their mind right now is one of the following, right? It's when is the CDL returning? When is the online league going to begin? When is the format for the online league going to be released? Why is it taking so long? Why haven't they announced the CDL format? Why is the CDL season ending? Why has there been no announcement made for the online league? Let's address all of those things. Let's just go ahead and get this out, get this out there in the open. In short, what is happening with the CDL? And let me just make sure that we're all up to speed, right? It's important to make sure that we're all on the same playing field. If I'm addressing anything, I want everyone to kind of be on the same sheet of music, if that makes sense. So basically, to get everyone back up to speed, the Call of Duty League released on March 12th that it was canceling all LAN competition until further notice due to COVID-19. Obviously, meaning the Dallas homestand that was coming up, the Chicago homestand that was coming up, etc. Everything else that the remainder of the season are all no longer happening, and that all competition is going to be played online instead. So what's the deal then, right? Why haven't we been given any information? Why are they making us wait this long? To be honest with you, the wait actually gives me hope for the future, because this wait shows that something is going on, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't know any information, because we do need to know some details, right? I think that the CDL fans deserve to have a few updates, at least when it comes down to most things. We need to be in some ways kind of kept in the loop on certain details. But at the very least, this wait tells me tweaks are being made, adjustments are being made, things that analysts like myself and even players have talked about in regards to switching to online. Those things most likely are being handled, because what would cause the online league operations to wait this long, right? If we were simply going to transition to basic online league with league matches, and we were going to play on the same inconsistent servers with the easy possibility that hosting would cause problems and that players would get booted, the league would have started last week. It would have started 2 weeks ago. The wait, as annoying as it may be for fans, is probably worth it. To be honest with you, it probably is worth it. As Call of Duty, spectators, fans, community members, have we not seen the issues that occur when we jump into something too fast? Right? Do we not all remember what happened pre-COVID? When Infinity Ward dropped, or rather when Activision dropped a bomb on Infinity Ward that, hey, franchising is now a thing. Last second before the game releases, hey guys, we're gonna make this game a franchised esport. Right? When that happened that quickly, right? Whenever the CDL format changed weeks before launch, have we not learned from that? Have we not learned that last second changes aren't all that great for the CDL? While this is a small sample size, the one I just talked about, it shows last second decisions, they don't typically end up perfect, right? As great as the new tournament format was, because it was, right? I mean, the new tournament format we were playing on LAN, having tournament style, it was so much better than the idea of having random league matches, right? That wouldn't have worked. I was personally starting to get worried about it as I thought about it more from a outside perspective. From a sports perspective, it works perfect, right? It's the exact same thing. It's what we want sports and esports. If we want them to be the same thing, this is exactly what you do. The new tournament format was great when they changed it around. What people thought was actually going to take place, at least from maybe more of a sports background, they didn't realize what, at least in Call of Duty, the way that it works. And from what I've talked to from a few different people from other esports, they loved the format, right? They thought it was absolutely amazing. I've heard people in Overwatch even have conversations before, and shout out to the guys on Contested, but this is just from a few other people that I've heard in the Overwatch scene. They've talked about, you know what, man? Honestly, we kind of like the COD format. It's pretty cool that you guys do the tournament stuff because we think that would be pretty cool as well. Now, I don't know how that would or rather how that would translate to the Overwatch League, but at the least, other esports were looking at Call of Duty and saying, it's pretty nice, pretty good idea. Like that idea. Maybe we should implement that ourselves. But let's keep in mind, right? So like we said, this was a last second decision. The format was already released to the public that, hey, we're doing these league matches. Players can be traveling from from city to city across the world. I forget what team it was, but one team had to travel from Paris to New York, then to LA, and then to London. It was like there was going to be so much traveling for maybe a match or two matches. It just wasn't going to make sense. But while the tournament format was highlighted and deserved to be highlighted, let's not forget that it's not perfect, right? It wasn't, now past tense, it wasn't perfect, right? We had the major championships conversation, right? The mass amount of matches that were being played per day. No trophies awarded to teams publicly. No losers bracket. Not all 12 teams at each event. Scheduling problems for franchises, for organizations. The lights being turned out as soon as the event ends. Not perfect, right? But it was great considering the time that we had. And as bad as I want the CDL to return, I realize that most likely for the right reasons, and keep in mind, I say most likely for the right reasons, they're getting things right before jumping in too quick. Now, not only do we realize, but they also realize the major benefits the league would have if it started today, right? Gamers, they're at home, right? Streams are getting more views than ever. Have you gone to Twitch recently? Have you watched YouTube recently? Look at how many people are streaming. Look at how many of your favorite streamers are all live at once. Not even just online, but TV. Television is having some of the highest ratings in years. Sports leagues are trying their very best to come back as quickly as possible because they realize everyone's at home. Everyone has the ability to watch something online. Everyone has the ability to watch something on TV. Sports is now looking at esports for assistance during this time, right? I don't know if people have been able to watch a few of my tweets, but if you haven't done so already, NASCAR is running iRacing events. It's being covered constantly. If you go to FS1, if you go to ESPN, constantly they're talking about iRacing. They're talking about online NASCAR. Fox Sports are putting on Madden tournaments on Fox Sports 1. The NBA and the NFL players are playing in Call of Duty tournaments against one another, for God's sake. I watched one the other day that Slam did. I mean, there were some of the biggest NBA players facing off against each other in just a 6v6 tournament. Thousands of viewers, all the guys were streaming. It was great. It was awesome. And most recently, even announced today, ESPN is hosting an NBA 2K tournament with NBA players coming up soon. It's going to be on ESPN. NBA 2K, professional NBA players playing a video game. That's going to be on ESPN. Esports is not asking if it can be on TV. It's being requested now. Sports is realizing the next form of competition they can turn to is esports. Everyone's at home. The esports audience doesn't get hindered by this. It only increases, and it increases because of the amount of eyes that are now on it. Because it realistically is the only form of competition that can be played right now. Right? All of those reasons are why they are trying to get this product. We're talking about the CDL, why they're trying to get this product out as soon as possible. time is money, right? I mean, that's the age-old term. And that's what the CDL realizes right now. And then that's why I think it is in some ways admirable, because what I'm assuming is taking place, I think, is for a good reason. I think it makes sense. I do. I think it makes perfect sense as for why we're having, in some ways, a delay based on a lot of people's opinions. And I mentioned this toward the start of the year, and with COVID's impact, it makes this kind of more accurate now than ever, unintentionally accurate, if you will. But the inaugural year, if you will, the inaugural year of the CDL will always, and I actually heard the contested guys mention this at the end of their show, which was great, because all esports are talking about this, especially the OWL and CDL. But this year will always have an asterisk next to it, right? Pre-COVID, it always would have had one due to the major versus minor conversation, right? Do these championships count versus these? I mean, that was one of the biggest subjects we've had so far throughout the year was, hey, do these championships count, right? Now that you have 8 versus 12 teams, does this one count versus this one, right? You have a higher level of competition, but not every team is there. What happens if the Atlanta FaZe? What happens if the Chicago Huntsmen, the Dallas Empire? What happens if one of these teams isn't here? Is it actually a major? Or which ones do you count versus which other ones? It was an impossible conversation to get down to the wire to. And it fully makes sense as for why that conversation was taking place. But my biggest worry about the online league transferring to, or rather the league transferring to online, and Rambo Ray, actually the coach of the Dallas Empire, shared the same feeling. The biggest worry, for me at least, is that players won't take playing online seriously. And that's due to previous LAN play, right? As prestigious as the LAN league was, as prestigious as the tournament format was, it doesn't feel as prestigious anymore. It doesn't. And there's no way that you can really kind of accomplish that. And it has to be a necessary evil, if you will. And we have to keep in mind as well, for other esports, some of them came from only a LAN background, right? This is the first time that Overwatch is being played online indefinitely. The problem, I think, that could be more for Call of Duty is that it used to exist online, right? Clearly, LAN was a step up. Now that we're headed back down, if you will, back down the stairs, back down to the lower levels, the worry is that these matches won't mean as much because we've been here before. And there's a reason why we progressed upwards. There's a reason why the number one requested thing while the online league was taking place in those Call of Duty title years, the major request was just get the league on LAN. It's all we ask. The only thing that we want is for the league to be on LAN. That was everybody's conversation point, which now leads me to the fact that the league's entire focus now is on champs. Every player, every coach, every organization, their focus isn't necessarily on the online format. Do they want to know what's going on? Of course they do, right? Whatever it may be. We don't even know all the details regarding the online league yet. But the focus isn't on winning a homestand anymore, right? The sole focus, no distractions anymore, is now on champs. Because no question about it, the only thing that matters and the only thing that will indefinitely hold up, if you will, the only thing we can kind of rely on to be played on LAN, which this better happen, but the only thing that we can kind of rely on, the only thing that will 100% go down in the record books as usual is who holds the CDL championship at the end of the year. All right, who holds the world championship at the end of the year? We'll get ready to jump on a new subject in just a moment, but rough estimate. When is the CDL coming back, right? When can we expect to hear an announcement? When can we expect to hear something regarding the format, the start date, etc.? Personally, and this is just solely off of what I believe to be true, I think an announcement will be made within the week. I do. And this is just a rough assumption, right? This is just what I think personally will take place. And take it with a grain of salt. My opinion is in some ways just as good as if someone else kind of threw it out, at least as of this moment. But off of what I believe to be true, I think an announcement will be made within the week regarding the format and possibly regarding the start date. One of the two, probably the start date, if anything, but I think that both will be in that same announcement. I think from the day of that announcement, which I think will be in the week, I think, which I believe in this situation, I think from this day in particular, it will be within 2 weeks that the league starts. So announcement, I think, comes from within the week. I think that announcement will say, hey, guys, the league is starting 2 weeks from now. That's just the way that I sit it on it as of this moment. I think 1 week for the format information to come out, and then within 2 weeks of that, I believe the league will be back. And the reason why I list off those dates is personally because I think as of this moment, the CDL wants to get things forward. They've had some time to work on things. They've had some time to iron out some problems. I think that they're currently working on a fix for a lot of the issues that a lot of people, including pros, analysts, have kind of brought up, which is, hey, online, it needs to be stable. We need to make sure these guys aren't getting hit offline. If we're going to do online tournaments, if you will, which I think is probably the better move, which how you format that, it's up to you. We can get into that in a later conversation. But I think that for me is probably right around this time. I think within a week we'll hear something, and then I think the announcement won't make us wait longer than 2 weeks, which is just based off of timing. What I'm thinking is probably the case. But hey, feel free to let me know your guys' opinions on things as well. It wouldn't shock me all that much if we do find out some information very, very soon. All right, let's go ahead and talk about something else. There's definitely some interesting stuff going down in the roster world, as the Los Angeles OpTic might be indeed making a roster change involving their starting lineup. Okay, so for everyone who may not know the current story up until this point, let's go ahead and make sure that we're all caught up. Let's make sure we're all kind of on the same page, if you will. In short, there was a Twitter clip that New York's own Zuma had tweeted out. In that clip, it was seen that Chino was scrimming with OpTic until Call of Duty managed to tweet out a graphic, or rather a screenshot of that before the tweet was deleted. Originally, people thought, big deal. He's in the middle of moving to Canada. Dashy, right? He's traveling. He's going back home, right? Not a big deal. This isn't the biggest deal in the world. It's probably a New York type of situation, right? Wrong. He actually moved to Canada and was streaming days before this scrimmage was done. So that conversation pretty much kind of gets thrown out of the window. Now, like I said, he moved to Canada. Not sure if this was because of something, involving online, whether he would rather be at home, or if this has something to do maybe even with COVID-19. Regardless, Dashy later goes live the night of all this speculation coming out. He wasn't answering too many questions on stream, and when he did, he seemed as if he knew just as much information as we did, saying, hey, I don't really know what's kind of going on right now. Your guys kind of is pretty much as good as mine. Talk like that. And then there was also, to go super far back in terms of the details, there was also a tweet Dashy had made a day before the Twitter clip released, talking on backstabbing. Oh boy, tell you what, this is it's interesting, right? Drama in the Call of Duty scene, it just happens to follow with each other. So what does this mean, right? I mean, really, is this just simply a move that the OGLA team is making to prepare for online scrimmages, because New York had made that clear when Sensor started scrimmaging with them that this was in preparation for the online league, etc.? Is this the same thing, right? Is this the same situation that's going on here with OpTic? I don't think so. I don't think this is the same situation that's going on with New York. I think this is an entirely different circumstance, because it was clear when that move was made from New York, it was clear what was taking place. If you are OpTic Gaming, you have had plenty of time to address all of this, right? If this is simply a minor online precaution, what's the call here, right? What's the problem? If we're having speculation, if we're having rumors that this could be occurring, why not address it, right? From a player's point of view, why haven't we seen anything be released if this is just simply something little, right? If this is just a minor opportunity for Chino to get reps with the team in case of online problems, let's address it. New York, at the very least, made a graphic. They were so well prepared and so well knowing of what could happen with rumors and all this stuff. They were so well prepared for that they tweeted out before anything happened. And if you're OGLA, you probably have that same mentality. And at the least, you can go off of what New York did. If it's the same thing, hey, we're doing this too. Big deal. Yeah, don't worry about Dashy. He's traveling, right? He's traveling. We're just going to put Chino in the starting lineup. Yeah, be fine. No, that's not happening. It doesn't seem to be playing out that same way. And based on the way that Dashy appeared in his stream on that night, and the subtleties of everything going on, I believe this to be a more serious issue. And I believe this issue is an internal one, right? We all remember not long ago, there was a role change, right? Not long ago, there were talks of personal problems being the root cause of OGLA not clicking. The role change between Slasher and Dashy, and the team improves instantly, right? They're in the Los Angeles Gorilla Series. They're down 0-2. Overall, coming into this event of LA, their homestand, they make the role change. They win a map. Everything is as good as it's ever been, right? They start playing unbelievable Call of Duty. I think what might be going on behind the scenes is a personal problem. It's rather an internal issue. And if I was a betting man, I'd say that it could be between Slasher and Dashy. I think if you were to say that there are two guys arguing on the OGLA team, who would it be? Based off of what we're seeing right now, I would imagine it's Slasher and Dashy. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that is 100% taking place. That is clearly what I think might be happening. Now, in terms of substitutes, Chino stepping in really shouldn't be too much of a surprise to anybody. Obviously, he's a substitute. We've talked about this previously on Off the Break. I listed out that the first person who'd be called up by OpTic would be their sixth man in Chino. And it'd be Chino over Gunjar, because in prior interviews that Mud Dog has had, he's talked about how Chino has embraced the sixth man role. He's written up documents. He's detailed other teams' S&D breakout strategies. He's traveled with the team. He's talking to them consistently. He's talking to them constantly. It only makes sense, right, that he would be the guy that steps into this roster for those reasons. He's putting in the work. He clearly is embracing the role that he's given. Now, in terms of prior titles, it hasn't worked out great whenever Chino has had to run an SMG. But I think in this particular meta, possibly with the flex role maybe being handed his way, it could work a little bit better. Like I said, certain teams interpret the flex role differently. Some of them, a majority of the time, let's say 80% of the time, are running a sub. Some teams, it's kind of more 50-50, or maybe it's even 60-40 in terms of running the AR more if you're Gato Rex in Minnesota, et cetera, et cetera. It depends on the team, depends on the composition, it depends on a lot of different aspects about that. But all of this does come as a shock, though, right? I mean, it would be totally opposite. We would totally be expecting, this would not be a surprise in any way, shape, or form if OpTic loses their series versus the Gorillas in Los Angeles, right? This move wouldn't necessarily be expected, maybe not for Dashy, but a move nonetheless would not be a surprise whatsoever on the way that OG looked. Because if they lose versus LAG, they're probably going 0-2 on the weekend. They're going into this online kind of opportunity, if you will, this kind of roster change window, as I'll label it, as it was called last year, winless. Right? They're going into this opportunity, this period, winless. They're making a move, no question about it. But to hear that this move is being made after how great they looked in LA, it's a shame. It really is. It's a shame that this very well could be the final time that we watch this roster full of what could happen. What happens if the story of them pretty much rebounding, taking down LAG, then beating the Minnesota Rocker 3-0, who, by the way, later goes on to play in the same event in the grand final versus Dallas. This OGLA team has some of the most talent in the entire league coming into the year on talent alone, nothing else. On paper, on talent alone, this team is top 3 in terms of talent on paper. No question. It's interesting. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, the fact that this could be the final time. In the midst of all the struggle, in the midst of what could have been, we finally see a glimpse of what this team has the capability to be. And now we're seeing this. And I'm talking about this OGLA team more in past tense, because I really don't think Dashy comes back as a starter. I don't. I'm thinking he either stays on the bench throughout the rest of the season, or we see a team go all in on him, or we see a team make a trade. Either he's on the bench or he gets traded away. I don't think that we see Dashy be in the OpTic Gaming starting lineup moving forward for the rest of this season. Because, and possibly, and if you're looking at what could take place in terms of roster moves, the reason why is because if you're OG, right, you're paying this guy some money, right? He has to be given the money that he's owed. But the last thing you want is for a marquee player who probably is making some great money, played fantastic in Black Ops 4. It'd only be right if he's one of the higher end paid players in the league. It'd make no sense to be paying this guy to pretty much just ride the bench the remainder of this year, especially if he's not providing any value to you. Now, if we learn more, and I'm sure we probably will in the coming days, we can discuss possible teams that could be an option for him in the future. But for me, It's a shame. It really is. A team that was hyped up as much as they were. I thought they had the right pieces with JCap and Slasher. I thought that these guys were going to be able to whip the young guns in shape. I thought, despite all the rumors talking about, Dashy and TJ, their prior history on the old OpTic Gaming roster, I thought that these guys, at the least, would be able to bring them back. And let me make clear, because this maybe isn't the only change that they make, right? This may be someone in particular kind of, in some ways, looking out for the future. This could be them saying, hey, you know what? Let's remove Dashy, see what happens. All right, 2 weeks from now, let's remove TJ. Let's see what happens. Next few weeks go by. All right, let's move JCap. Let's see what happens. Things like that, I think, would be interesting to see. I think seeing moves like that would be interesting to watch. But I think as of this moment, I think they're kind of locked in on making a one-move, or rather, kind of making a one-move trade, because there's not a whole lot of teams, at least that we know publicly, are kind of making players available, at least in this inaugural year of the CDL. From a few, different rumor mills and people that I talk to, sometimes it's kind of a little bit quiet. No one really wants to make the first big marquee move. And again, we'll talk about what teams possibly in the coming weeks, because I'm sure this probably isn't the end. I don't think we see an announcement be made of, oh yeah, Dashy's out of the lineup probably within this week. I think it'll be more progressive, especially because we don't even know when the league is coming back. So if you're OGLA, try to get as many reps in. If for some reason problems are really starting to occur, it wouldn't shock me if Dashy comes back. But I think if you get a guy out of the lineup, it's usually meaning that something great is not about to come around the corner. That's just the way that I think of it. That's what I think. I'm not thinking that we see Dashy back in the OGLA starting lineup for the rest of this season. But like I said, it should be interesting. It should be an interesting conversation to kind of keep in mind throughout the rest of the year. And like I said, I think there is a chance, but if I were to invest in one or the other in terms of, does Dashy return, does Dashy not return, I think I'm investing in stock in the idea that he doesn't return back. I think that's just the way the team is looking as of this moment. And I'm seeing a few bits of conversation in the chat talking about it. I know we'll kind of address this later down the line. I personally haven't really gone super in depth in terms of what team he probably makes the most sense for. And keep this in mind. This has been in kind of how do you want to explain it exactly? Kind of a conversation that has gone under the radar for a very, very long time, is the idea that Dash didn't even want to be in OG, or rather didn't want to be on OpTic in the first place. Right? That was a convo that was had at the start of the year. The overwhelming conversation that has been discussed for a very long time is Dashy for Gunless. Right? Dashy goes to Chicago Huntsman. Gunless comes over to OGLA. By definition, everybody kind of gets what they want, or rather gets what they want. They kind of move on. Interesting talking point. Maybe something we definitely want to dive into for the future. I think for Chicago, that may work out perfectly, depending on the way that you look at it. At times it may work better for one roster versus the next. You also have to think about, coming years. How does that kind of function? But to be honest with you, I think every team that does not have Dashy would very much consider having him on the team. Now, like I said, you have to hear about internal things. That would probably be the only thing that would maybe kind of block him from certain teams maybe really showing excitement in him. But if you're a team looking for a Slayer, a team that's in desperate need of some opportunity to get your roster back on track, and if you have the money, if you have the investment money, why not? Right? This guy is unbelievable. The talent that he has, the ability that he has, it's crazy. I think if you're a low-level team, and if you know, which we don't know for sure, but if you know as a team, as an organization, that he's available, it makes perfect sense to at least find out what's going on with him. But hey, guys, feel free. Like I said, let us know in the chat. Let us know even in the YouTube comments. If you're watching this later down the line, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, tweet at us at Lando on Twitter, as well as, like I said, let us know in the comments of YouTube videos, stuff like that. Even in the Twitch chat, I see you guys having some conversations. Let us know what your thoughts are on Dashy with OGLA. Do you think this is his final time playing in the starting lineup? As well as what team do you think he possibly could go to if things start to go more astray? All right, let's go ahead and move on to our final topic of the night. Your questions answered. Time for the mailbag, folks. If you did not see the tweet I put out just a little bit ago, what was it? Pretty much maybe a few hours ago, tweeted out asking for your guys' questions. Any Call of Duty Esports questions that you have. Start to talk about them a little bit. You guys can feel free to ask a few questions in the chat as well, and maybe we'll have opportunity to address things. But hey, like I said, if you guys are in the future interested, want to have a few questions answered, you can feel free to use the hashtag off the break. Always looking at the hashtag. We'll do our best to answer any questions that you have about Call of Duty esports. First question coming in, like I said, off of Twitter, all these from Twitter. First one coming in from my good old buddy Kingdom Soldier. Will all of this have a negative impact or positive impact on viewership when we return to LAN? So like I said, kind of addressing the overwhelming conversation with COVID, its impact on the CDL as of right now. Will all of this have a negative or positive impact on viewership when we return to LAN? So kind of an interesting curveball at the end. I thought it was going to be pretty much just talking solely about viewership online. I would say it's going to have both a negative and a positive impact in certain ways. I think if you're looking at viewership in terms of when we return to LAN, I think this is at the very least going to be at first kind of a publicity thing, right? From a publicity standpoint, right? Everyone's at home, everyone's watching, you have more eyes than you've ever had, at least if you're talking about online, if you're talking about TV. Clearly viewership numbers are going up for everybody. I think it will have a positive impact currently. Long-term online does not make sense for sure. I know there's a lot of people excited about it, saying, oh, it's going to be great to kind of get back to where we used to be. I understand those conversations, but I need to see personally, I want to see what steps the CDL has taken to make sure that online can function in a good environment, because I'm excited to see what happens in online. But preferably, I mean, how awesome would it be, right? How awesome would it be if we had the ability to continue, which this isn't possible, but if we had as many viewers as we have the opportunity to gauge right now, if we were playing tournament CDL format, that'd be perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. So I think, will this have a negative or positive impact on viewership when we return to LAN? I think it'll be somewhat positive, but the question is, when will we return to LAN, right? Is it going to be champs time? Is it going to be next title? I don't know if all those things are going to carry over, but I think at the very least, you have the ability to gauge some new eyes. A lot of people are at home right now. I think it will be more positive than negative, but long term, I think it could start to weigh on people a little bit. I think if online if the CDL doesn't take the right precautions, which ultimately is the overwhelming answer to this question, depending on the precautions, depending on what has taken place, how they address online, how they make it exciting, how they make it new, how they make it feel just as influential or as important as regular LAN matches are, for me, will depend on how long-term this can remain a positive. Next question comes through from good old Pro Poutine. Shout out. He said, with the new league structure in place, is it easier or harder for new talent to break in to pro play? So again, unfortunately, can't address the full, can't address it with a full-on answer solely because we don't know details that are going to be coming with the CDL in terms of online stuff, because obviously when it comes down to the pro league, that hasn't been addressed. So online and amateur play hasn't been addressed yet either. But in terms of new talent, personally, if things are handled correctly, which I know is an asterisk that I feel like I have to put next to everything, if online play is addressed correctly, both from a LAN, or rather both from a pro and amateur standpoint, I think that it's actually easier. I think it is. And I mentioned this when it came down to players kind of getting different opportunities. I mentioned this in one of the first Off the Break episodes that we ever had here on NVTV. I mentioned that I think it's easier now than ever for amateurs to get the opportunity to play with pro teams. Because if you're looking at it from a pro team standpoint, right, this guy doesn't have to play on LAN. We don't have to worry about his LAN jitters, right? The way that he plays online, we know that's going to translate because we're online again, right? The worry of online to LAN, which as minor as that has gotten over the years, it is the ultimate amount of less that it possibly can be, because you're not changing anything. Scheduling no longer gets in the way, right? If you have events that are taking place, if you have an event, a CDL event, a homestand that's taking place, and you have to wait to bring in certain players, you no longer have to do that anymore. I think roster changes are easier now than they've ever been because everything is online. Everything is back to the way that it used to be. And if you are a pro player standpoint, the pro players also in their minds probably think the exact same thing. We're going back to the way that things used to be. And the way that things used to be were roster changes every week, roster changes every other week, roster changes after every event. Now that's not going to happen this time around, of course, because of contracts actually being a thing now. Obviously, when it comes down to money, right? Players are worth more than they've ever have been in prior. So things like that obviously aren't going to take place. But I think in terms of new talent, in terms of just roster changes in general, but for amateurs to possibly get that call up, I think it's easier now than it's ever been. But the big thing in terms of highlighting amateur players definitely could be a problem. I'm very, very interested to see exactly how the CDL manages to address the amateur scene, how those tournaments kind of work for the future. I think it's going to be a big deal. But even still yet, I know a lot of people have talked about it. Oh, the online amateurs, or rather amateurs in general, they're not going to have the opportunity to prove themselves because the streams aren't live. I think it has hurt it, but not nearly as much as a lot of people thought. But I think if they handle it correctly, you do your online tournaments, everybody is online now. I think it's easier for everybody to watch these younger players and to kind of see exactly how they play, how they thrive, things like that. Yeah, I think it's easier. I do. I think it's easier now than it's ever been. And I'm excited to see possibly some more rookies be called up. On the topic of rookies, coming in from Anchors, he says, who do you think will be the rookie of the year? Now, not a whole lot of people to look at for right now. A few new additions, I guess you could say, to the rookie of the year conversation. If they do 100% come into the starting lineup, is Nasty, now with the London Royal Ravens, who looks to be in the starting lineup. And Attach, we had a conversation with him, just a few days ago here on Off the Break. He talked about how Mac Meltz was in the starting lineup. Pretty much said, no questions about it. Mac is in the starting lineup, looking great. From the scrimmages that I've heard, or kind of how they've been going, from a little bit of gameplay that I've watched, the 10s that I've been able to catch with Mac Meltz, he looks fantastic. I think he's going to really speed up the pace for the subliners, which is going to be a very important thing for them. But it's going to be hard, right, if you are Mac Meltz, because you kind of have to consider that the fact that the year has already started. If I was personally a voter in the Rookie of the Year conversation, which hopefully down the line this actually becomes a definite thing rather than just based off of speculation, there actually is a final word, if you will. I think for me, if I was given the vote, it's going to be hard, because you have to consider the fact that we're currently going from LAN to online. LAN means more than online, just the way that it goes. Everybody knows that, just the way that it happens. Now, if you are looking at other players that are rookies, if you're talking about your Shotzys, your Illies, it's going to be hard to take that away from them, right? Because Shotzzy, by definition, which he probably for me is over Illy right now, he won an event, right? He looks better now than he ever has, and he's going from LAN, where he's kind of already proved himself, at least in LA, now to an online environment. If he plays even better, that's even more stock in his Rookie of the Year conversation. And like I said, he's already won a LAN event, and unless Mac or Nasty or any of these younger guys, they manage to walk away with the CDL championship, it's going to be hard, right? If you don't walk away with the Con Champs title, it's going to be very, very difficult to pretty much do much, if you will. But that's just the way that I look at it. I think that's the kind of the way that you have to keep the conversation. It's pretty much a matter of the fact that a lot of these young guys are going to be coming into these new teams. It is going to be very difficult for them to capture, or rather to live up to the same highlights, to live up to the same amount of resources and opportunities that guys like Shotzzy have, which they've already got an event win under their belt. So it's not going to be possible to beat that. Great question coming through from Anchors. Next one that we have comes through from Anthony Ortiz and Kim Cruz, I believe. I think both of them pretty much asked a very similar question, which I'll be taking Anthony's in this case. Do you ever see Call of Duty moving to PC, but the players using controllers like the NBA 2K League? I do. Big thing for me, sponsors, right? You have PS4 attached. You probably have to use PS4 consoles. It's not going to be easy to kind of get that away. But I think it's going to have to be gone. It's going to have to be at least gone publicly for that to take place. But because of all the possibilities that exist now with Call of Duty and PC, Call of Duty now kind of being cross-compatible, I think it'd be a great opportunity. The amount of customization that you can get, the amount of frames that you get. As someone who plays pretty much with a controller on PC, I can promise you it is a much smoother and enjoyable experience, because you don't have any caps pretty much anymore. You have the very best way to play Call of Duty in terms of strictly an FPS point of view, or in terms of just in general the way that your system works. PC will always be the best, just the way that it is, unfortunately. But I think it's possible, but I think it's still a decent ways away. All right, next question comes through from Slappage. He said, with the new online structure, is anybody considering having all 12 teams compete instead of just 8 teams? Yeah, I feel like they have to. I would be very surprised if Activision Blizzard, if organizations are not considering or not thinking about doing 12 teams. I think that would be kind of surprising if they decided to not go that route. I think for their best interest, it would be a very good idea for them to consider having all 12 teams for online events. I think it's the best way that you can do it. It makes it more legitimate. I think all 12 teams needs to be a conversation if it's not one already. Good question coming through from Slappage. And our last one, in terms of the conversations that we've had for Twitter, Vet comes through and says, with COD moving to YouTube gaming, has it affected growth in a negative or positive way? I know this one's kind of similar to Kingdom Soldier's question, but in general, it has negatively affected viewership, but for a positive reason, right? The positive being for what could come in the future. My biggest worry is the flip-flop effect, right? My biggest worry is that we go from one streaming platform to the next, right? Like a sponsor. One time we're here, one time we're there. COD, and really in general, has never really had a super stable platform for longer than a few seasons, right? We go from Twitch to MLG TV to Twitch again to YouTube. We're never kind of staying in the same place. And if you are the average fan, you never really know where to go from year to year at times when it comes down to Call of Duty. So that's kind of my biggest worry. Call of Duty traditionally does way better on YouTube for those that have seen. I think catering to the average fan is probably a good move and has an easier chance of being done. Negative, obviously, is that you miss the beast, right? You miss the core audience. You miss the amazing viewership opportunities that exist in terms of Twitch, which they're the big guy in the room, right? It's the elephant in the room is that Twitch obviously has the most viewership opportunities, at least when it comes down to esports. Very well dominated by Twitch. That's the reason why they do what they do. Obviously, kind of unfortunate in terms of the fact that you can't do both, but that's the way that franchise leagues works, at least as of right now. But has it affected growth in a negative or positive way? I think short term it has negatively affected it, but I think long term the effects of being on YouTube actually could be a good thing as long as YouTube streaming continues to advance, as long as it continues to address the things that it has. I think it could be a great thing where you kind of go with the new guy on the block in terms of YouTube. They may offer you more opportunities to grow that could appeal to different things. I think it could be a good thing for the future. But great questions, really great questions. Appreciate everybody for asking these. Again, if you are interested, you can feel free to use the hashtag #OffTheBreak on Twitter. We'll be taking a look at those constantly, and we'll be trying to address as many of those as we can here live for the future. But yeah, appreciate it, guys. We had a lovely show for today. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We didn't have some fantastic conversation, right? We talked on the online CDL season. When can we expect for it to be back? The format, things like that. Dashy and OGLA. Is Dashy off the starting lineup? What is happening with that situation? Along with the fact that we answered your questions as well. Massive thank you to all of our listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, etc., as well as to all of you for watching live. Problems, I know we had a few issues when it came down to the stream, but apologies for that. VODs, everything will be up on YouTube. You can feel free to listen to this audio-wise on Spotify and Apple Podcasts like a lot of our awesome viewers do. Quick schedule update before we do close things out. I will not be here for our show this Thursday/Friday. We are making a little bit of a schedule change from Friday to Thursday shows. If you are a watcher of Off the Break, you have nothing to worry about when it comes down to that. We will be back here next Tuesday. Personally having a personal reason as for why I'm missing. It is a positive reason, I'll say that at the very least, so nothing worrisome. But so make sure if you are interested to tune into Contested this Thursday, but Off the Break will not be back until next Tuesday. Again, that's next Tuesday. Should have a great show by then. Hoping that maybe by the time that we do see each other next on Tuesday, we do have some CDL announcements. We should be having maybe even a few interviews scheduled for then as well. But look forward to joining you all very soon. Again, that's next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. That's 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Enjoy your week, and I'll see you guys all next time.